thank you for shining a light on this really important subject. I'm glad we're having this hearing. We need to get to the bottom of one of the biggest challenges farmers are facing these days, and that's the cost of inputs, and particularly fertilizer. It's my pleasure, Mr. Chairman, to introduce to the committee Trent Kubik, and he is not only the current president of the South Dakota Corn Growers, but also a farmer and a rancher, along with his wife and parents. They farm near Hamel, South Dakota, raise corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and milo, alongside their cow-calf operation. And by the way, for any of you who've been to South Dakota, in that part of South Dakota, they also have a very, very abundant pheasant supply. But Trent graduated from South Dakota State University with a degree in agronomy. He and his wife, Shannon, have 2 sons. He stays very busy as a certified crop advisor and as a volunteer, FFA and 4-H volunteer, and he's a very active member of his church. And I know also that he is a person, a man of great courage, because he is a diehard Green Bay Packer fan in Viking country, which is a distinction that we share, by the way. But I'm very pleased to have him here today and look forward to hearing a South Dakota perspective on this issue. So, Trent, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to allow Senator Thune to take my place in the order. We appreciate the fact that even though he is the majority leader, he's one of our most active members.
Thank you.
He hasn't forgotten his roots.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you can count on that. And thank you again for your leadership on this, and Senator Klobuchar for taking on this issue. And I'd be remiss if I know this isn't the subject here, but we need to get E15 done, and it solves a couple of important problems. One of which is demand for corn in this country at a time when we're losing some of our export markets, and secondly, increasing the supply of fuel in this country at a time when gas prices are going up. So as an economic matter, it makes all the sense in the world. So I deviate, and I understand, and thank you for your indulgence on that subject. But I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today and for sharing your thoughts on the impact of fertilizer prices and supply chains on the ag economy. These high input costs, adverse weather conditions, low commodity prices all impact our ag economy, and it's important that Congress continue its work toward long-term solutions that support the entire ag industry. And I am very proud of what we did last summer in the Working Families Tax Cuts to increase reference prices for ARC and PLC, improve crop insurance protection, and update disaster programs. But I will say there remains more to be done. And all of the members of this committee know that rising input costs have been eating into producers' bottom lines over the last several years, particularly, I would add, the price of fertilizer. This steep increase, I should say, would shrink or altogether eliminate any grower's profit margins, even during times of strong commodity prices. So it needs to be addressed. So, Mr. Kubik, would you elaborate on how the price you have paid for nitrogen and phosphate fertilizers changed over the last several years, and how those changes have impacted your planting decisions over the last few years?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for that question. I did go back and look from 2020 to 2026, kind of where the trends of fertilizer. I got a little bit of PTSD from 2022, I'll be honest, and I must have blocked that out of my memory because I can't believe we paid that much for fertilizer in 2022. But just for reference, in 2020, my farm paid $355 for a ton of urea. By the time 2022 hit, that price jumped to $830. A little bit of retract in 2023 and 2024 to $400 and $500, $600 range, which at the time doesn't take a sharp pencil to figure out that it's not sustainable and we can't be profitable at those levels. And then when you look at we look at phosphate, so MAP, $435 a ton in 2020, jumped to $1,100 a ton in 2022, and has stayed consistently high. Came off that high of 2022, but stayed in the $700 to $800 range consistently for the last 4 to 5 years. That has changed. So we applied it. We've applied less because of it. And actually in 2025, we did not apply any phosphate on our farm because it just did not make economic sense for us. And we're taking the risk that hopefully in the coming years it'll get cheaper and we can catch up. So we've dealt with this for a long time, and then when we have world events that happen that completely blow that up and really exacerbate the problem, we feel it. So this has been a long-standing problem for a long time.
And it predates current events, but nevertheless, I mean, this is contributing, but this is something that's going back a long ways, and there are some structural things, I think, here that need to be addressed, which is why we have some of these transparency bills. Could you just very quickly share your experience with the recent shortages, in particular, the shortage of nitrogen in South Dakota?
I'll be honest, Senator, we have not experienced a shortage of nitrogen yet.
Okay.
For our spring needs, the nitrogen fertilizer has been there. A lot of this stuff was in place and in country long before the events around the world happened. And so they went up in price significantly, the product that was here. So we do have our product. We're starting to get concerned about what do we do in crop as our crop is growing and needs more fertilizer. And then as we look towards 2027, it's a real concern.
As we know, there are a small number of manufacturers who have the lion's share of domestic fertilizer production. So I would like to ask this question of Mr. Rosenbusch. In the United States, what percentage of sales for potash, nitrogen, and phosphorus, respectively, to U.S. retailers come from manufacturers other than the largest companies?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Each market is very different, so I'll start with potash. Potash, only about 2% of our domestic manufactured product represents the market here. When you look at nitrogen, again, it depends on each of the different products. Ammonia, we have a large percentage of U.S. domestic producers. We have 18 different companies that make up about 80% of that. And then when you get to phosphate, about 60% of our domestic manufacturers represent the market share in the United States. The other 40% is imported product. So it depends on each of those. And when you think about the total market for the United States, it's not just the domestic produced product, but it's also the imported product that we need to serve all the farmers' needs.
Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, but if I can, I would like to submit a couple of questions for the record.